Hey guys, welcome to Star Wars Podcast. Today I have something special for you guys. I have a friend, Adam at Red 5 Reviews, whose channel I recently checked out, and we have something awesome to talk about. He's a huge Star Wars Legends book collector. Adam, please introduce yourself to our podcasters. Tell us where we can find you, what your channels are, and what do you do?
Yeah, my name is Adam Bryant. I have three YouTube channels. I recently created my Star Wars channel, Red 5 Reviews. That's where I'm going to be reviewing and discussing everything Star Wars books, video games, comics, movies, as much as I can. Probably my biggest channel that I have on my own is my original, which is Bryant VRM. That's kind of like my other nerdy pop culture type channel,
Yeah.
where I talk about comics and movies. And the third YouTube channel that I have is with me and Matthew from the Geeks Attic and Jeremy from Stupid Chainsaw Productions. We have Paper Movies, a novelization book club. We read novelizations or movie tie-in novels, and we just discuss that. We all read them, and we do like an hour-long podcast or so and discuss them near the end of the month.
Mm-hmm. You know, and yeah, I saw your channel first, and I saw that you're interacting with Matt at the Geeks Attic, who I also have friends on YouTube, and it's sort of like a small network of people who are just enjoy talking about Star Wars started building. And I remember going first to your channel, and what attracted me is just a fan sitting in his room and showing book covers and saying like, hey, this is what I enjoy doing, highlighting something that they like, focusing on things that are positive. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because recently I clicked back on your channel and I checked out one of the more recent reviews, and I saw a really, really funny, really well-produced video of how you accumulated all of these Star Wars Legends books. And this is the topic of our today's discussion. I wanted to talk about collecting Star Wars books and reading Legends in 2021. Obviously, we're going to touch on some canon books as well, but let me hit you off with the first question, Adam. What is your earliest memory experiencing Star Wars?
Well, my very earliest memory experiencing Star Wars was actually one of the first movies I've seen in theaters. It's when they re-released it in the 90s as part of the special edition.
Mm-hmm.
That movie also kind of contributed to my very first nightmare that I had, because I had nightmares about that scene where Luke finds his family, they're burnt, charred corpses, and
Yeah.
that scene gave me nightmares. But
Really?
yeah, ever since then, I got, hooked on it. I haven't actually read the books until a little bit before The Force Awakens came out. I wanted to see where the story went before Disney bought it, and I read Dark Empire. That was my first Legends story I read.
Mm-hmm.
And then my brother eventually said, you got to read Shadows of the Empire. I think it explains so much, what happens in between the Empire and Return of the Jedi. So I eventually bought it on Kindle, and I read it, and I enjoyed it. And ever since then, I just eventually I bought the Han Solo trilogy because the Solo film was coming out. Then eventually I started hanging out with Matthew, on YouTube and everything,
Right,
Geeks
right.
Attic. And I just started collecting more of the books and started reading them. And I just started slowly collecting Legends. At first I was just I'm not going to collect all the Legends, but because there's so many, but eventually.
So it looks like movies were your first intro, and I'm hearing more and more fans about the same my age group or slightly younger. I'm 40. I surmise you're younger than myself a little bit. The Star Wars special editions, they came out in the mid and late 90s. I think they started in 1997, right? They introduced a lot of fans to Star Wars, believe it or not. People have this idea that Star Wars was always very popular. Well, there was a period actually when it was kind of the popularity was slowly waning, and George Lucas said, well, you know what, I'm going to make another trilogy. And in the meantime, let me just deck out all of these, special editions, throw them on the screen. So that's cool, that you remember yours. I also remember mine. I was a kid way back in Russia in 1987. My pops brought a trilogy of cassettes, VHS tapes, and that's how I saw them. And I honestly don't remember separating between the three movies. To me, it was just one big giant story, because I saw them back to back, and that's how I experienced them. So that was my earliest memory. I just wanted to get situate ourselves and get your thoughts on, to see kind of what led you into books and what kind of influences you, and what's your main pillar, with Star Wars, where it begins and how it translates into the books. So my next question to you, Adam, is how do you started sort of getting into it a little bit, but do you remember like a specific episode or moment or feeling that kind of got you onto this path of like experiencing expanded universe? And do you remember the first book that you read?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like I think it was Empire Strikes Back, the film when it came out. Like when I very first saw it, that's where like I saw that the lightsaber fight between, Luke and Darth Vader. Like that's where I was like, yeah, this I love this because and I've watched that film so many times as a kid. Like mimicking the lightsaber fights and everything, and but yeah, like I said, it wasn't until like my late 20s when I started reading the Star Wars books. And yeah, my very first Star Wars novel that I read was actually a canon novel. It was Lords of the Sith.
Hmm.
And because I was like, yeah, I've always wanted to check out these Star Wars books because I missed out on the Legends books, like that was like our generation. And I just wasn't really a big reader back then.
Hmm.
But so I read that. I'm just like, I really enjoyed that. And I wanted to read more. And so Solo was coming out. Like, I want to see how I want to compare the movie to the original Han Solo trilogy,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like what got me into wanting to read more and more of the Star Wars books. Was just I like to comparing the two different stories and
Hmm.
comparing to the films and everything.
Okay, so it's basically it's like all encompassing story to you, and you kind of like want to see how it translates into different mediums, right? That's something actually that I do want to dive into a little bit deeper as we talk. But that's cool. And please answer this question to me because I can't move on forward in this conversation. What compelled you to like collect all of the Legends books like in such a short time? It took me years, man. Like, how did it come about?
Well, I honestly helped Matthew from the Geeks Attic with his collection. Like right around the time I met him,
Hmm.
he said that was he actually had one more novel to collect in his Legends time. That was the novelization to Revenge of the Sith,
Hmm.
and I found it at a bookstore here in Oklahoma City. And I just messaged him. I'm just like, hey man, thanks for having me on your stream. It was nice meeting you. I actually have this, and I'd like to donate it to the channel. And he actually made a fun video too with him completing his series. And I just wanted to collect more Legends books. I didn't expect to collect all of them, but it's just as I kept going to the bookstore, it just I kept seeing more books in the Legends. Like, oh well, they're cheap here. They're good price. I'll just start collecting them, and just one thing led to another, and I just kept collecting them and collecting them. And Matthew and Jeremy kept making fun of me. It's just like, I thought you said you weren't collecting all the Star Wars books. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's just and it just kind of and I went to eBay and Amazon to collect some more of them. And I was just like, I'm on a mission now. I got to get all these books.
So I guess it's that little moment in the video where he hits the book your way and like it just slaps you in the face. Like it's almost like a callback to that scene where you helped him out. Now he's helping you. That's the idea
Yeah.
behind it. It was so cool. I really enjoyed that video, man. Do you also
Thank you.
do you also collect canon books or not yet?
I do actually. I don't have as big as with Legends, but I
Hmm.
have all the novelizations to the canon films.
Hmm.
I'm looking at them now. I have Twilight Company, Dark Disciple, Heir to the Empire, Catalyst, and I have a few of the High Republic novels. I have
Hmm.
both of the From a Certain Point of View novels.
Hmm.
Um, I have not read these. I collected the Padme books,
Hmm.
Queen's Shadow and Queen's Peril, for because she really loves Padme.
Right.
Also, we have Bloodlines. So I have quite a few canon novels, but I've still got a ways to go before I collect all of those.
If I were to give you collecting points, it's like you get automatically 4 out of 4 stars. It took me years to collect everything. It honestly, I started in late '90s, early 2000s, right before 1999 when Phantom Menace dropped. Because as a kid, I was always curious in Russia. Wait, why is there only episode 4 to 6? What happened to the previous ones? Like, do they exist in America? Like, are they sequels? Like, we were in the dark. We didn't know what's going on. So when I came over here in '96, I immigrated to New York City. One of the biggest questions I had, like, hey, what happens to Han, Luke, and Leia post episode 6? Like, right there, the next day, what's the story there? And I slowly started reading, and picking them up. And I just like yourself, I never expected like I would have one day, this whole collection, and at one point there will be a start and end to this era of Star Wars literature, and then we're going to move on to something else. Nobody would even predict we'd have another trilogy, right? Everybody thought it would like it ends
Right.
up with episode 6, but yeah, it's and slowly like before you know it, it's a reading hobby, but also it becomes a collecting hobby, right? You could
Yeah.
like display them, you could put them on, like you have like a nice little, shelves and everything. So that's another aspect of it too. Reading it, but also saying like, hey, I have the badge like of collecting them all. I have them all on my shelf. You can show them off to your friend. All right, let's move on. Next topic I want to touch about is movies came first, obviously.
Right.
It's a cinematic universe first and foremost that later started diving into books and comics and video games and so forth. Do you personally separate the story in the films and the events in the films from the books, games, or to you it's just one complete story?
To me, it's just one complete story. I know that there's some stories out there that, even in Legends, they're just like, this could be canon to Legends or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that, I think, if I remember correctly, like The Force Unleashed has been, debated whether it's, canon to Legends or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I think there was a novel, um, I cannot think of it right.
Mm-hmm.
It is, Splinter of the Mind's Eye. That's it.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
I've heard that was actually kind of iffy on, um, from what I've heard.
Right.
But yeah, I like to just think of it as all just one big story. It just, it makes it more, I guess, appealing. Like whenever I'm reading this, it's just like, oh wow, I remember this mentioned in this one,
Mm-hmm.
in the one part in the film, or like, oh, I remember this from being mentioned in that video game or in that comic. So yeah, I personally, like whenever I read Star Wars, like I'd like to connect it to the films and the video games. It's just, I guess it's also easy. Like you can associate, like when Luke or Han says something, you can just associate that face or that voice to it. And I guess it helps me kind of get through all the
Mm-hmm.
books.
Yeah, I mean, it's a model that obviously they took, like, you take any mythos from Scandinavian mythology or Egyptian mythology or Greek mythology, like the classic myth, it's always, reoccurring gods and goddesses and heroic figures and same motifs. And obviously, with centuries, as the cultures shifted and changed, the legends and heroes also changed, but they were all one like big canvases of the same story. And it's not hard to see the model being replicated in modern comics, right? DC, Marvel, and Star Wars as well. It's trying to tell this like one complete story, because I think what people want to do is return to fan favorites. If 2,000 years ago or so, Hercules is the favorite hero and item of worship, then obviously it's several centuries after people want to return to him and re-experience that fun story and add to it, modify it and change it and so forth. To me, honestly, after I started experiencing Star Wars outside the three movies that I remember as a kid that I grew up with, it started with Legends books, and then obviously we got the prequel movies, which, I personally, for a very long time, at first I was like a jaded hater. Before that, I tried desperately to love them. And then with years, I came around and started finding the good and interesting things in them, the story that could have been. But honestly, nothing felt quite like the original trilogy. And I started interpreting this whole Star Wars franchise as variations of storytelling. If you have like a Matthew Stover or Alan Dean Foster, you mentioned the Splinter of the Mind's Eye, right? The original. It's that author's take on the universe. Like I could care less what we call it today, legends, canon. To me, it is only as relevant as separating between the two. So fans who are newcomers, so they're not confused. Like you and I would talk about a novel. Hey, we know it's a legend novel because it released year so and so on. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
But as far
Absolutely.
as personally experiencing it, me as an end user, like it's all up to me what's real Star Wars and what's not. And honestly, like aside from the fact that it never feels aesthetically the same as the original trilogy, I embraced it all. I look at the modern canon novels, the Force Unleashed video game, which for a long time like I couldn't accept. Because like, oh my God, this apprentice, he's too powerful, and he's able to outsmart Palpatine along with Darth Vader. But then again, like, hold on a second, that's a variation on the storytelling. That's what these guys were trying to do, right? If you look at the documentaries of behind the scenes of making that video game, they talk about how they wanted to express the Force the way it was never done before. That's way before like all of those Couture sequels, a sequence of video sequences, FMVs, where you see like the Jedi use crazy powers. That's what that is. It sounds like you want to add something to that Force Unleashed one.
Oh well, it was just also like it's kind of like how I also see it as like it's like reading comic books. Like there's so many different universes in comic books, but it's like it's all like coexisting. Like some events may happen the same, some may be different, but it's all like, but yeah, like there's several different versions of Marvel stories or DC and that's just kind of how I also just kind of interpret Star Wars. It's just like between canon and legends. It's just like, this is what happened in this universe of Star Wars and this is what happened in this universe. But I've always liked that it also like at one point it coexists around the original trilogies. It's just like in both stories, like those events still happened, but it's just like, but in this universe, a different path was taken and vice versa for the other.
Yeah, I think a good example would be Flash, right, from DC. It's like when he goes through that, I keep forgetting that power that he has when he starts changing realities, right? He creates parallel universes.
Oh, yeah, it goes to the Flashpoint.
The Flashpoint, thank you. Yeah. I think they addressed it in the show, right? I think I got up to that season where they start showing how like he wants to save his girlfriend, and because of that, because of his actions, some events converge. They take place in both universes, but then other things are happening differently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting way to look at Star Wars as well, because, there will never, I think, there was an effort before to tell a consistent story, and there is now, but, it's people making these stories, and sooner or later, one creator would want to do things slightly differently or his way. Even George Lucas, right, arguably, when he created prequels, he kind of like stepped on or overwrote or neglected some of the factual stuff he created in the first trilogy. And I think nobody else knows Star Wars better than the creator, right? I think it was a conscious effort on him to say, like, look, let me distance a little bit from what I've done before. I want to experiment. He constantly talks about in the interviews how he likes to do things differently and experiment and surprise, the audience. Now, storytelling methods are different, from books to movies to comic books. What works for one medium doesn't necessarily work for the other one. What's your favorite medium for Star Wars and why?
My favorite of between are you asking from like Legends or canon?
No, let's say different mediums like comic books or movies or video games.
Okay. Sorry. I personally I would say my favorite medium are the films. Like, it's just you get like the books are great because but it's just like with Star Wars is meant to be a spectacle. Like you want to go for the great X-wing and TIE fighter battles and lightsaber fights. So I think if I were to go in order, it'd probably be like I enjoy, the films first and foremost, and then I enjoy the books, and then I don't play a lot of video games as much as I would like to, so I'd probably put video games third. But yeah, definitely, I would definitely place like the films as my favorite.
Yeah, I would think I would agree with you, because most people start there. There's people not as many like into reading Star Wars books or books in general. They enjoy visual, mediums. And you're absolutely right. I think the reason that especially Episode 4 of Star Wars is considered the jewel of American filmmaking is that it's a perfect representation, just like Ben-Hur before it, the Ten Commandments, all of these costumed, historic dramas that Hollywood was known through the 60s. Star Wars kind of represents that. It harkens back to the golden age of spectacle of filmmaking. And, you want to go see it, you see all the excitement. Like I had one professor when I was studying animation here in New York City, Howard Beckerman, and he is one of the people who drew the original Popeye. So he was our professor in the school, and he said his daughter, and George Lucas went to see Star Wars here in New York City, and I love this gentleman. He's this elderly, sagely person. He looks like Lincoln, literally. We called him Lincoln, and he said, "Gee, when I came out of that theater, the first impulse that I had that I've never had before, I wanted to go and see that movie again because of the spectacle, right? Because of the attack on the run on the Death Star and all those spaceships, and so forth and all that stuff." So movies are your top favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, what helps with the spectacle is just, like John Williams' score. It's just, I don't know what it is, but it's just like when you just see it, it's just like it's always like, it always draws you in further into the film. It's just like, I would consider, I mean, I know he's done other great scores, but like the Star Wars score is just, like every time you hear that, you just get,
it's the top.
A burst of excitement. Yeah.
Yeah. I think regardless how you and I would look at any era of Star Wars filmmaking, the music has been consistently dope, like throughout across the board. You take the
Yeah.
sequels, you take the standalone movies, you take the shows. There's something always in it that they put like an extra, spice on it. I don't know what it is, but it always feels special. Um, let's get back to the books a little bit.
Yeah.
um, you know, can you talk about what is your criteria for a good book in general? It doesn't have to be Star Wars.
My criteria for a good book is I don't know, it's just it has to kind of like, grab me by like a few I normally give a book like a few chapters before I decide if I want to finish it, but it's just I want to feel like, there's something that's, I'm going to be surprised, or like there's going to be a surprise at the
Hmm.
end that like getting there. And it's just like I have a good after reading so many books, I have a good way of predicting things in a story, like
Hmm.
this is going to happen or this or like so I want to I don't know. For me, I just kind of want to be like, I want to like feel like at the beginning of the book, there's gonna be a great surprise at the end, like a journey to get through.
Hmm.
Personally, like and like whenever you finally get there, just like it just blows your mind.
Hmm.
Um, but it's I like the book to be unpredictable in my just
Okay.
like I want to
So you
I
wanted
just
to, you
want
wanted to subvert your expectation, basically.
right, absolutely.
All right. Like as you read your books, do you ever like while reading pay attention to things like stylistic choices or prose style or like different devices that they use to like to create tension or stuff like this, or you just like are wrong for the ride and just like want to enjoy the book?
There's some books I do that, but
Mhm.
for the most part, I'm just along for the ride. But if there's an occasion where I've noticed if they use like this certain like misdirection tactic, or like they start adding like suspense or something like that,
Mhm.
or if like an Easter egg, as they sometimes call it, like it's just like, oh hey, I see what you're doing there. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, whenever I pick up a book, I'm just like I just kind of want to be along for the ride.
Yeah. Like I've been my father raised me on reading world classics. So like back in Russia, I had this library of hardcover books of called the World Classic Library for kids. It was like over 100 books, and you had anything from Stevenson to Rudyard Kipling, to, Jack London, everything, the world classics, right, of everything. And back then, of course, as a kid, you can't distinguish between different stylistic choices or what makes a classic a classic. And when I came here to America and started reading Star Wars books, my English was very, very poor to non existent. And I couldn't identify what constitutes good style. So to me, the only criteria, the question that I asked you was, is that the book's capacity to pull me in, like you said, like I have to live in that world. I don't care what happens at the end. Like to me, the ending is never the biggest reward. It's the journey, the surprises along the way, and not necessarily reliant on like plot twist or wow factor. Like, oh my God, this happened, or this guy betrays Luke and so forth. Just pull me in. Let me live and breathe with these characters and let me care for them throughout the journey. So that was like for a very long time my only criteria, and only much later I started paying attention, to stuff like as I started studying animation and writing and it's storyboarding and so forth. Then of course you get more technical and you want to like disseminate what's what and what works and what doesn't work for the book. I started doing it much, much later. But Adam, could you also speak to the difference, and is there such a difference as I don't like versus bad writing?
Yeah, that's that one's kind of the. It's just there's like just some stories that like I'm trying to reread it right now. I'm just it's Red Harvest. Like I'm
Mm,
wanting to
mhm,
read it for Halloween. It's just I don't like I was halfway through it and it was just I, I mean, and it's sad because Joe Schreiber wrote a great zombie thriller in Star Wars, but just whenever I was rereading it, it's like I don't know, it kind of felt a little like lazy in a
mhm,
way, because
mhm.
like he's just like, oh well, hey, everybody loved Death Troopers, so like
Right.
it's like he was expecting to get the same reaction. So I can tell sometimes when they're definitely not you know like there's not craft to it. It's just like it's like, hey, people will like this because it has Star Wars on it.
Mhm.
But it's just so and
Yeah.
it's that one's kind of that one's a little tough for me, but it's just
It's the reason that I asked the question is that it seems to have like created this wall between the fans that, if I don't like something because it's bad, and
Hmm.
if you don't find it bad because I think it's bad, well, you're stupid. It's like it's people talking in those terms. And I started kind of like, from a very, very long period of time, I started seeing that, hold on a second, just because I don't like something doesn't mean it's bad. Right?
Right.
I may not gravitate towards it. I'll give you a perfect example. The movie Clockwork Orange was on the hot like recommendation list for me for years by friends and friends like, hey Ben, you like science fiction, you like dystopian kind of like cinema, watch it. You gotta watch it. It's a classic. I saw it. I thought it was an important film to watch. It's obviously has its cultural relevance and it's absolute pillar of filmmaking, but I didn't like it. But I told myself, hold on a second. Well, it just doesn't resonate with me. I don't like that kind of story. Was it effectively told? Yes. Did the actors like perform their job? Was the script tight, and taking you somewhere? It didn't feel like, it's all over the place. It had a clear, beginning, middle, and conclusion. Yeah, it had all of those elements, but for some reason it didn't resonate with me. And I started looking at the ideas that, hold on, fans are so adamant to jump like on each other's throat and start arguing points, especially when it's like a faceless form of communication. But again, I wanted to ask you that because I don't think that just because you don't like something is bad by default.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like there's books that I've read that, my friends may love that I didn't like. And, it's just like, and, or vice versa, I may have liked them, but they're like, oh, I hated that book or something like that.
Yeah.
But just like, I totally agree. It's just like, we all have our different tastes. Like we all have those things that, draws us to this type of story.
Right.
And, just, yeah, it's very important. Just like, I've been blessed, to have friends that just like, oh, well, I like the book, but you didn't like the book. That's okay. That's all, that's
Yeah.
all good. And, vice versa, that just, it's very important, it's just like, I do know that there are like some people that like, it's just like, oh, you like this book. Well, you're an idiot. Or you didn't like this book. Well, you're an idiot. but it's just like, but it's just, no, I mean, that's like, that's definitely like, it's just, all that matters is like that, how you feel about the book, and it's just,
That's
if
a
you
great way
enjoy
of
it,
looking at it.
yeah, it's just like, if you enjoy it, that's great. But if you don't enjoy it, that's also fine. I mean, like for books that I didn't like, I'm just like, well, I didn't like that book, but I still, don't regret that I read it. I mean,
Mhm.
I I enjoy reading, and even though I may not enjoy the book, I still enjoy, the time that I get to, read the books. And
Mhm.
it's just, it's very important that, it's just, you can't, just because someone may like a book that you liked or vice versa,
Yeah.
it's just, just like, oh, well, okay, I'm sorry you didn't like it, but, and move on. Or
Let's, if you don't mind, let's get like home in on a couple of like specific names and titles. Let's start with Legends. Can you name one book that you really, really liked in Legends, and one book from Legends that like just didn't work for you for some reason?
yeah, let's see. I really liked Heir to the Empire, like the Thrawn trilogy.
Hmm.
I also like the Darth Bane trilogy. I think my favorite, just to name one, my favorite was Darth Plagueis.
Hmm.
I really, really enjoyed that novel. And I just loved, like kind of like what we were talking about earlier, like connecting things. Like I liked connecting Plagueis to the Phantom Menace, like certain moments that took place. I loved how it was written. But the one novel that I know for sure I didn't really care for was the Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void. It
Hmm.
wasn't the most horrible book that I read. I mean, I'm still trying to work my way through, but that one was probably by so far my least favorite. It's just, I appreciate that. If you don't mind me explaining why,
No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I appreciate what they were trying to do. I just felt that it was a little misleading. Like
Mm.
looking at the title, you get like, oh, this is how the Jedi was formed. But no, it wasn't that. Like they were already like established in like the Jedi.
Yeah.
Then it just like I said, it got too predictable because it was also like in Star Wars, you get a lot of family against family type of you know plot
Yeah, it's a
plot
popular
device.
motif. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Hmm.
plot. Yeah, motifs. Thank you. That was the word I was thinking of. And it's
Hmm.
just like I said, it just kind of got a little too predictable. So now I was just like, it it wasn't what I was expecting, and like I said, it got a little predictable, and so yeah, no. But when it comes
Gotcha.
to Legends, yeah, Plagueis by far my favorite, and so far Into the Void is just
Mhm.
so far that's just my least favorite.
Well, sir. Well,
Uh
um, one of my favorite books to this day that I enjoy was the first one that I read. I actually have it here. It's my one of my recent acquisitions. I tried to pick
oh.
up.
The Truths of Bakura.
Yeah, so I have the entire Legends collection in paperback, soft covers, but I'm now working my way through getting like the hardcover ones. And like I have
Nice.
this crazy compulsion. Like my books have to look mint. Like if it's not brand new looking, I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's I thought that a lot of my feelings on this book are due to my first impression. I read it in 1998 or 9, and my I was basically 4 years in the country. My English was very, very poor. And I thought, oh my God, I'm just getting new Star Wars and I'm getting all hyped up and excited that I could manage finish a book in English. And that's where my like of it comes. So I recently reread it. And I'm like, hold on a second. This book holds like up to this day like crazy. It is so good to this day. So it's still one of my earliest and best memories. And surprisingly, this book really holds today. One of my least favorite books, and I gotta say up front, James Luceno is one of my favorite Star Wars authors. He's one of my favorite sci-fi writers. Darth Plagueis, like I couldn't get through half of the book, and I'll tell
Oh.
you why. It I don't think it has to do with the fact that it's poorly written or it's bad. It's James Luceno. I know his style. I know what he's doing. You know what I couldn't grasp? It's the ideas and where it was heading because and I will definitely go back to it. I'll revisit the book, I'll finish it, and I'll review it on my channel because that's I got to give my dues to the author. He worked hard on this book. But the thing is, during the period of the original trilogy, right, when Palpatine rises to power, the lore of the Sith is virtually non-existent. They don't exist. The Jedi don't know about them. Like, it's a distant past. It's a dark chapter, right, on our on our Republic, and who are these guys? And you have this opportunity and chance to explore that rich lore and how it works from the underground and how they're crumbling the Republic from inside, right? And then Palpatine becomes the main instrument of that destruction. Half of the book is industrial espionage. I'm like, wait, where are we going with this? Why am I getting into this guy's personal background where it's Plagueis? It's supposed to be the main, the instrument of Republic's destruction. And what was really, really hard for me to accept is that the fact that he's a moon. For those of us who don't know, like guys, those little elongated skull creatures, they're just silly looking, man. Like I looked at them in the movie, I wanted to laugh. I'm like, oh my God, what are these goofy looking guys? And then specifically to choose those as a Sith Lord, for some reason aesthetically, it just didn't work for me. Again, I recognize it. It's my own bias, right? A person like
Right.
you, another fan, would sit down and say, like, hey, I am digging this. This is cool. Let's jump in all of that industrial stuff and see how he's working through that avenue to undermine. But for me, it didn't work. Now let's talk about the canon. Can
Right.
you bring an example of a canon book that really resonated with you and something that you just didn't care for?
I think my favorite canon novel is Lords of the Sith. Like I said, it's nostalgic for me. It's the first one I
Mhm.
ever read. I like the story. I loved that we got more tension with
Mhm.
between Vader and Palpatine. Like spoilers if you have not read it, but I won't. There's like this scene where like it's between where Vader attempts to stand up to the Emperor, and then the Emperor just stares at him like, "What did you just say?" and then like it's like quiet for a minute, then Vader just submits and kneels, and I'm just like, ooh, like that gave me goosebumps just reading it. And as far as like I really love that one. It's like you get also like some great Vader scenes where he just goes ballistic on people, and like
Mhm.
um I think if I were to say my least favorite canon novel so far, I did not care for Resistance Reborn.
Mm.
I wanted to, I really did. I listened to the audiobook, and it's just I just like after like a few chapters, I love the stuff with Wedge because he's one of my favorite characters.
I haven't read it yet, so I don't.
Oh,
I don't
oh,
know
okay,
yet.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
No,
Sorry
no,
to
it's fine. It's okay. I don't know yet. I'll get to it eventually.
I just it was just kind of boring,
Mm,
and I lost complete interest in it. I still made it all the way through because I wanted to say like, okay, I can't quit on it yet. I got to read it, and
right.
but it's just it. I would always like listen to it like driving in the car on the way to work and everything, and it's just like near the last half of it, I was just like, okay, I'm like I'm out of the story. I'm no longer
Yeah, it's
interested.
the worst feeling, man. It's
Yeah,
when like I'm reading one book right now, which is I always try to mix science fiction in general into my Star Wars reading. I can't just read Star Wars. That's why I'm kind of like on the slow. I've read over 60-70% of Legends. I haven't read them all either because I need to put something else in there and always have a reference point. So this is what hardcore science fiction is doing. This is what popular media tie-in fiction is doing and how the two compare. So I'm reading Dan Simmons' Hyperion. It's an excellent book, but it's a
nice.
tough read because there's a lot of philosophy, there's a lot of human existence. There's a lot. It's very layered books. It's a slow read. I wanted to quickly mention before, like I talk about my favorites in the canon, the scene that you mentioned with Vader when he was kneeling down. You know what was really cool about that scene? It almost makes different readers interpret it differently because when the author is very effective, he is able to evoke a feeling or a thought in you without spelling it out to you. And depending on what the audience is, right? You came from a different walk of life. I'm a Russian immigrant and so forth. We could look at the same scene and have like a different texture, feel for it. It would still be
Right.
valid. So my interpretation of that scene was like he's kneeling down, but he's like, you just wait and see. And it almost
Right.
preps for that scene later on when he's trying to corrupt Luke and get him on his side. Like, Luke, come and join me, and together we'll destroy the Empire. Right? And that connection, that resonance between a book and the original film is like, it was so eloquently done. I'm like, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I
Go
loved it.
ahead.
It was a great scene.
Yeah. When it comes to canon stuff, I would say, first of all, I'm blown away. Most of the stuff that I have read is exceptional. I mean, Lucasfilm, Del Rey, Disney, whoever you want to call it, there's not only a great way to keep things consistent. And again, there's a couple of hiccups here and there, and they were in Legends. And I'm not going to get into this whole war like, oh, well, Legends was consistent too. Why they did have to discontinue it? It is what it is. Live with it. It sits here. Nobody is discontinuing it. Look, we're getting these guys over here. It's there for us to enjoy. Nobody's forgetting it or trying to forget about these books, but they gave the avenue for different authors to put their own stamp on it and have their own voice. I'm like, okay, let's check it out. And I'm consistently blown away how the good stuff is, but there's still things that I don't like. Like, for example, when the High Republic was announced, I'm like, okay, let's see. Let me be cautiously optimistic. Where are they heading with this? Okay, new entirely like a different era. And it's not overwriting the old Republic. It exists in its own timeline. And it's also not impeding on the prequel stuff. Because I enjoy a lot of prequel novels from the Legends. And the High Republic is not doing either. It's like it's staying in its own bubble. So when I read The Light of the Jedi, Jesus Christ, I was blown away. I could not expect this level of good. I'm like, okay, they're trying to advertise it. They're trying to get fans excited despite the older negativity. Let me check it out. Let me see what it's all about. My expectations were here. It's always good to come into something where your expectations are kind of low, and then you get surprised. Because if you build yourself up, like the sequels were meant to be the greatest Stanley Kubrick trilogy of films ever produced, obviously you're going to set yourself up, for failure. So Light of the Jedi, I really enjoyed. One book that didn't do it for me was A New Dawn. Have you read it? It's Kanan Jarrus and Hera. So it's a
I have not
tie-in
yet.
into the Rebels show. Like, have you watched the show?
I actually have, yes.
All right. So, I'm a huge fan of the show, and I was very excited to get the book. And it just felt so brutal, like compared to the animation that we get, so dark and brutal and brooding. And honestly, like it took me out of it because Hera and Kanan Jarrus didn't feel like their respective selves. So I couldn't relate to the book.
I get where you're coming from on that, yeah. And I recently purchased Light of the Jedi, and
Mhm.
I've been working through it. It's been kind of a slow process. It's not because I don't like it. It's just like,
Right.
other things come up like, oh, I got to read this for my one channel. And then but
Mhm.
what I've read so far, I enjoy it. and I really am enjoying. Like I enjoy that it's in its own, like you were saying, it's not conflicting with the old Republic.
Hmm.
It's its own little time.
Right.
So it's like when I first heard about it, and I saw the cover, I'm just like, I actually, I think I like the way the uniforms look and everything. It's different.
Hmm.
We see more Jedi with yellow lightsabers, and um, it's like when I first saw that, I was just like, okay, kind of like you, I'm just going to keep my expectations a little low. But from what
Hmm.
I'm reading so far, I'm really enjoying it. I think
Hmm.
it's well crafted. It's like when it comes to Star Wars books, I love when the author is like, okay, I want to truly make this a Star Wars book, a story, and not just be like, hey, it has Star Wars on it. It's going to be great no matter what. And,
Hmm.
because like you get that with some novels, like,
In other words, when they're tapped in those familiar tropes, but put like a surprising spin on them, right? It feels familiar but fresh. That's like I think the best
right,
of both worlds.
right.
Um, I want to touch on something that is not as pleasant or enjoyable, but still relates to our conversation with Star Wars books. I just want your personal opinion, as somebody is I'm meeting for the first time, hopefully we get to do this podcast more, and I would love to hear your thoughts. And I'm looking forward to to your reviews. And
Yeah.
guys, like I'll provide all the links in the channel below so you could go and check out his reviews. Adam does like justice to the books that he reads. He does what fans do. He reads the stuff and then he puts his 2 cents on it, whether he likes it or not. But
Well, thank you.
Adam, do you think there is this woke culture or political agendas or this virtue signaling that permeates the Star Wars canon books? That like did it take over?
I'm I mean, I don't personally think Disney is like, evil in a way. I
Yeah.
think they're just I mean, I've heard quite a bit of all of I've heard a lot of people talking about like all of there's like a lot of, uh, I'm trying to think of the word. There's a lot of politics in it recently.
Right.
And I don't personally, think Disney's evil. I think they're, they're definitely trying to tell their own story, or their own version of Star Wars. And,
Hmm.
it's just, um,
I mean,
I
do
know
you
that.
feel it? Do you feel? I'm sorry. Like, do you feel
Okay.
it? Any signals of it in actual content, like in the books? Like, do you feel like they're trying to signal something to you that doesn't belong in Star Wars, or it's annoying to you?
I have not yet come across anything like
Mm.
that that's grabbed my attention on that yet. No. Like I
So,
said, it's mostly been from what I've heard from other people that have read it. So, but I haven't personally experienced like anything that would be like
right.
what? Yeah. So,
So, why do you think there is this negative backlash for canon books?
in my opinion, it's just I know that like with some fans that grew up with Star Wars, like they this was their Star Wars, this was their stories they've told,
Hmm.
this was their stories that they grew up with, and and I can respect the fact that they might feel like their childhood may have been maybe like been, I guess, butchered in a way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but it's a little bit different in my sense. Like I mostly like I started with the films, so it's just I personally like the legend story better.
Hmm.
But it's just I have come across quite like streaming, like either on the Geek Static or Matt Wilkins channel. It's just
Right.
there's always been people that just like oh I hate the Disney canon so much, and
Hmm.
just like I have seen that it has definitely started a like some form of controversy. Like I won't
Yeah,
deny that, but I just felt like it wasn't, that was never the intent
yeah.
to. But it's just, but yeah, with Disney, in control of Star Wars now, I know that they're definitely going to put their what they normally do with their stories into Star Wars now. So
Disneyfied, right?
yeah, Disneyfy it. Yeah. So and
Yeah.
I have I have noticed that like reading some of the new canon stuff, there is those hints of Disneyfied stuff that I've come across and everything. So
Hmm.
in a way, that's probably what you were referring to a minute ago, was like, but it hasn't been a problem for me so far. It's just I just
I'm glad to
like,
hear it.
yeah, I like it's I like the stories from Legends better,
Hmm.
just because I know not all the Legends books are great, and I know that there's some that are just horrible. I mean, I just and Like I've heard my
You
friend.
did. You said that? Oh my God! How could you say that?
Even some of my friends will admit they're like, "Oh yeah, I love Legends, but this book was horrible,"
Yeah.
and like, but
I
yeah,
think there is this social rift happens because first and foremost, it reflects our culture today. People are so divided culturally, us versus them, this versus that. I'm left, you're right. This bipartisan, like polarizing kind of like ideology, it permeates into art as well, because nothing else reflects the state of culture as art, music, film. Artists are the first commentators on the state of culture. And I can understand that fans who grew up with the original Star Wars, like myself, I'm 1984, 81 kid who grew up with it, watching it in 1987, that you might feel displeased, or that I just had this conversation with my younger brother, he's 34, that this Star Wars doesn't feel as special anymore. It feels very commercialized. It feels very corporate. It feels like bam, 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 bam. And in that sense, eventually you will find a jewel, like when X-Men series franchise, after 20 plus years, they produced Logan. Boy, it was worth the wait. We were sold an art film under the guise of a Hollywood actioner, right? You saw that trailer, like, yeah, we're gonna see some badass, Wolverine, and you go in and you see a real film. You see something that, like, I don't know. I don't want to say Stanley Kubrick, because Steven Spielberg could have directed. Like, oh my God, what is this, right? So I feel like being hopeful and being an optimist, I feel that that special time will come, even within the Marvel universe. When you get to a point where you see something like Winter Soldier, it rises above just spectacle entertainment. It's social commentary. It's fear and warmongering, right? And terrorism. I'm like, I couldn't believe I'm watching a Marvel movie. I'm like, wait a second. Like I worked in the comic book shop for 13 plus years. And believe it or not, to this day, just the emblematic costume of Captain America stands for something to people, that he's wearing those colors. There's a wonderful scene, just to get away a little bit from Star Wars. I remember reading a comic book of a Captain America where during the Civil War, when Tony Stark, right, the Iron Man is trying to get him on his side, and he says, look, we got to follow the governments and blah, blah, blah. And Captain America says, look, I don't follow governments. I follow American people. I choke up as a Russian immigrant who lived in America for 25 years. I choke up. That quote feels native to me, how much that character stands for. And to be able to reproduce that on screen, even X amount of years after, and in that, Disney-fied Marvel era, you get that one Winter Soldier movie. So could happen to Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like, I'm hopeful.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Disney, has definitely come out with some good stuff. Where to be like, I enjoyed the Rogue One movie, like that, like that, the Ep 7 9. There was some great moments, and there was some moments that like really punched you in the gut and everything like that. But just like, but yeah, they definitely like when they definitely came up with some like you said, the High Republic, like that was that was just a great book. And, I'm still getting my way through it. But like when I first saw Rogue One, I was just like enamored, like, cause like, I love that they brought in this new perspective. Like, we see the Star Wars films mostly from the Jedi's perspective, but to see it from soldiers' perspective, that like, when you first get Darth Vader in there, like you see like this, colossal juggernaut of the dark side, and like, how he's just plowing through this hallway full of rebels like they're nothing. That's just, I loved seeing a different perspective. They just like, but yeah, so I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say at all that I truly felt like when Disney acquired it, they wanted to come up with something great. But I know that there's been some controversy, and there's been some drama behind the scenes to where just the content this wasn't that great, or but it's just I do like when I first saw The Last Jedi and we get that scene where Luke died, I was honestly like, yeah, I'm not watching another one, because like, that was just a hero of mine growing up. And it's just, I didn't like the direction that they took him in, like where, he was.
And that's why, like, you can criticize it from that point, right? And still engage me in a conversation. Like for a guy, for somebody, again, born in 1981, I loved The Last Jedi. I loved it. It's my favorite Star Wars era film since Episode 6. And It has flaws. I'm not going to put a front up like it's a flawless movie. It has a lot of flaws. There's a couple of things that I felt Ryan Johnson was pulling up too much. I'm like, okay, with subverting expectations. Can you please have Luke grab that, X-wing? Give us some reward at the end. It wasn't flawless, but I enjoyed it. I think it's healthy for us, amidst all of this, fandom menace and all these guys, creating hype and controversy and getting clicks, because that's all they're after, honestly. They're not into honest conversation. They're into like agitating people and getting people angry and getting clicks and getting money for it. Why can't two fans like you and I? And that's why I enjoy talking to you. That's why I want to invite fans from all walks of life. You don't have to be a YouTuber. As long as create some kind of Star Wars content, your stuff, we could sit down and talk about this. Why can't we have two angles on, The Last Jedi, which I felt everything they've done with Luke was phenomenal. I loved it. It was such a different take from what we see of Luke in Legends and canon books. That it gave me a fresh perspective. It's like, oh, so it's not the hero Luke. It's, how they have a saying, don't meet your heroes twice. Right. It's that version. It's that twisted, darker version. I can understand why people were saying like, but how about all of the context of 30 plus years that we didn't get to see on screen? It's valid points. I'm not going to tell people that they're wrong in their opinions, that you're wrong not liking it. I just happen to like it. But to start wrapping things up just a little bit, if we can come back to the Star Wars books, a conversation we started today. For our audience, for viewers who are watching today, would you say that Legends are worth picking up and reading in 2021 and beyond?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, whether Legends are canon, just like I always try to say, like, yeah, I want people to have as many perspectives when it comes to Star Wars, and like, so I know I've reviewed Legends mostly on my channel, but I am going to review canon or books that were distributed by Disney. It's just I absolutely recommend picking up Legends, like even in today, like even though like the story may never continue, it's still it's filled with great stories, and I'm excited to I'm like kind of like you. I've only a certain percentage into the Legends time, but it's great. It's new perspectives, and it's just they're classic stories, and that's why I like them. Is like they're classic, and like I think they capture a great Star Wars like tone. Like when you read them, like, yeah, I could see this totally fits to the films. But yeah, I totally recommend picking up Legends. Like if we have time, I'd like to recommend like that
was my next question. Could you recommend a good starting point for your or your favorite Star Wars Legends book? You read my mind.
Sorry to jump the gun there, but
no, go for it.
Great way to start. Like you can start. I would either recommend Heir to the Empire, like the Thrawn trilogy, since it takes place after Episode 6, because that was the very first story that we got post Return of the Jedi in Legends. So I definitely recommend start there. Or if you kind of want a new perspective, you could recommend. I could recommend the Darth Bane trilogy. Is great to.
That's a fantastic. I love that series. Drew Karpyshyn. I was on the fence about him a little bit because as a fan of video games and the KOTOR games, I realized, okay, writing for video games is one talent. Writing literature that doesn't feel like, it's a media tie-in kind of like thing or novelization. Writing a solid book, that's a whole different craft entirely. So I was on the fence a little bit, but because he has a Russian last name and because I wanted to give him a benefit of the doubt, I'm like, let's see what it all comes out to. And reading the first book, I thought Bane would be this like dumb big brute with a lightsaber. And boy, was it nothing what I expected. He's so cunning and intelligent, and he has motivations when he turns to. I would say he's one of the better rendered and fully fleshed out Sith Lords ever to grade Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed it. I liked the journey with those trilogies. Like there was failure, like he was defeated, and he actually had to like earn his title. And I really enjoyed it. But yeah, and also to get perspective on the Old Republic, it would be a great way to start. With the Darth Bane trilogy, and yeah, like you just showed, like they've recently started re-releasing them.
There you go. You want to enjoy more Star Wars? There's no excuse to say that somebody is preventing you or a straight up 1941 style or Nazi style. They're burning these books like Indiana Jones movies. Remember that scene with the Nazi stuff? Go check them out. They exist. They're right there. I would say one of the first books that I would recommend is actually my favorite one, the Truth of Bakura, because a lot of fans want to be chronological, and they're saying like, hey, I want to know what happens after this episode, or I want to know what happens before episode 1. I made actually a whole video about where are good starting points to get into Legends. It either could be like your favorite hero that you want to follow. Like, for example, some of the first Star Wars novels, even before Throne Trilogy, right? Were the Brian Daley? I believe Brian Daley. The Han Solo trilogy, right? Yeah. It's, hey, you want to chill with Han Solo for a little bit, see his adventures before, right, the original trilogy? Go check out that character. You don't have to read in strict chronological order to enjoy it. They weren't written in chronological order. But Adam, I wanted to actually come back a little bit and touch on something that you said. You said about that Star Wars Legends books touch a certain tone. Mm-hmm. You nailed it, because you know what's funny? When I first came here and I was an avid reader, I enjoyed reading always. I was so intimidated when I went to Barnes and Nobles and I saw this giant section of science fiction and fantasy books. I didn't know the authors. I didn't know where to start. My English was crap. And I thought to myself, I just don't want to waste time. Where do I start with the good stuff so I don't start reading bad stuff and just waste all of my time? And I said, you know what? I like Star Wars. Let me pick up and start reading Star Wars. And that was actually my avenue. And you know what's funny? Remembering it now, how science fiction or fiction in general is written today, those books, especially the Bantam era, encapsulates that vintage late 80s, early 90s science fiction aesthetics. Sometimes we may call them today cheesy or a little bit naive. I live for that stuff, man. I could put on Goonies any day of the week and I'm going to enjoy the crap out of it, because what's cheesy today to the cool kids, to the sarcastic kids, again, you and I, we generally speaking come from two different worlds, two different cultures. I became American, right? Mentally and emotionally, but I come from a different culture. Kids around the world would watch indie movies like Indiana Jones or Back to the Future movies with a great American rock and roll in the 60s. We could all relate. It's universal themes that we all can relate to. And you nailed it with that word tone. Earlier Star Wars books have that very special 90s feel that you can't get today. And that's excellent reason to pick these up and read them. And the last question for today, and if you have any other questions for me, I would happily answer them for you. But is there any canon book today that you've read that you enjoyed as much as your Legends? I know you said you're primarily a Legends fan.
Yeah, like I was saying, Lords of the Sith, I really enjoyed that one. It's just like, because for most of the canon novels, like what we're talking about, that hit that tone too, that Star Wars like tone, because like I love the tension. Mm-hmm. I remember it was a long time ago when I read it, but I remember it being near the end, it was also like very brutal. Like, like I think Vader decapitated a couple of people, like, and like for something like that, produced, from Disney and everything like that's not something you normally see that much. I mean, but yeah, with like the canon novels, I've read Dooku Jedi Lost. You can also get I have the book and the
audio book came out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one's good because you get like a perspective from Count Dooku from the canon. Like you get a little bit from Plagueis and Legends, but like I enjoyed Dooku Jedi Lost. It was great, and I like Count Dooku as a Sith Lord. My other favorite that I enjoyed, just because I'm a fan of Han Solo, I liked Last Shot.
I want to read that one next. Yeah, I really want to check it out. I heard good things about it.
Yeah, I thought the audiobook was pretty good too. Like it has like a cast of characters. Like Mark Thompson reads it, parts of it, and there's a cast of others as well. So Last Shot, it wasn't like my favorite, but I did enjoy it just because like I'm a fan of Han Solo. And but yeah, those are some good recommendations to start off with. Especially like if you haven't seen Solo yet, that's a good book to read before. Mm-hmm.
Before checking out the movie?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. It's funny. I stayed away from novelizations for a very long period of time. If you guys could see over there, I have like the Revenge of the Sith novelization. And my buddies were telling me like, Ben, are you insane? these books, novelizations are so good because they go beyond the movies. They give you like added scenes, they give you character perspectives and stuff like that that don't get in the movies. I'm like, hold on a second, what? All right, I gotta pick. So those were the last ones I picked. I actually acquired all the Star Wars movie novelizations pretty recently, but those are the ones that I want to read. But one book that I wanted to mention from canon that just floored me, man. Like I enjoyed it as for a while. I called it my favorite Star Wars book of all time, even more favorite than my Legends books. Lost Stars by oh my god,
Claudia Gray.
Claudia Gray. Lost Stars. I was questioning the premise of the book. Like, you gotta like take all three movies that we all know and love and just exploit them for a Star Wars book. How's that gonna work out? That's impossible. And then she takes all the events from the films. On that canvas, she creates an entirely new cast and how all of these people are experiencing these events differently. I couldn't believe it. Like, and the struggles, like you said, and the tension and the adventure, and just wanting these characters to prevail by the end of the book. Like, I couldn't stop reading it. Like, there was very few books in my life that I read that I could literally call page turners, that I would literally sit and like 24 hours just consume the whole thing. That's what I did with Lost Stars. I just couldn't stop reading. I wanted to get to the end.
Yeah, Matthew from Geeks Addict, like that's his favorite canon novel, and he's recommended that like so much. And I'm like, one day I found out the books. I'm like, hey, I'll finally read it, and I haven't read it yet, but I want to. And
oh my god, I'm glad I didn't spoil anything.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. No, you're fine. Yeah, but it's just like, but also like with Last Shot and everything, I like that we get perspectives from Han and Lando, like in their journeys, like while they like we get like. We get their perspective from their younger selves, like while they're in possession of the Falcon, and I really enjoyed that too. And like, but yeah, like I would definitely recommend, Lords of the Sith. That's a great book to start off with canon. And there was Master and Apprentice. I thought was a decent book too.
One of my favorite Star Wars books of all time. Again, for somebody who used to be a prequels hater, I could not believe I missed Qui-Gon Jinn that much until I read that book. It's just phenomenal. I don't think there is a single book that exists in Legends or canon that explores the ideas and the hardships between the master and his disciple. Because one book that touches upon it is Dark Rendezvous with Yoda when he encounters Count Dooku. He wants to bring them back. It's an older Legends clone era novel. It kind of goes into that. And it compares the relationship between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda and Dooku, but not to that extent that Master and Apprentice does. That was done immaculately.
Yeah, I enjoyed getting, just like, because we didn't like with canon, you don't get a lot of stuff before the High Republic. You didn't get a lot of stuff before the Phantom Menace, and I enjoyed getting that story because like it delved into like prophecies that Qui-Gon was like very infatuated with, and like whenever I heard some of those prophecies, like I know what that's talking about. But yeah, and Qui-Gon's one of my favorite characters too, so I'm glad that we got a canon novel with Qui-Gon.
Yeah. Adam, we're going to start wrapping up here. Could you please remind all the audience, what are your channels, where are you at, and what's the latest book review that's coming on your Star Wars channel or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. For my Star Wars content, you can find me at Red 5 Reviews. For like upcoming Star Wars books that I'm going to be reviewing, since Halloween is coming up, I'm going to be reviewing both Death Troopers and Red Harvest, and Death Troopers is also a good a book that I would recommend for Legends for Halloween. And I'm also going to be reviewing some Disney or canon books. Like I'm planning to review From a Certain Point of View and Last Shot and Lords of the Sith. Like those will be coming soon. You can find my other channel, Bryant VRM. That's where I just kind of talk. I do book, comic, and film reviews there. It's kind of like my nerdy pop culture. We're just not Star Wars on there. Just and if you're into movie tie-ins or movie novelizations, you can find me and the Geeks Attic and Stupid Chainsaw Productions at Paper Movies, a novelization book club. We even have a Facebook page. We're about to, we're going to be discussing the novelization to the James Bond film License to Kill this week. And then next month, we're diving into the original novelization to the original Halloween film, Michael Myers.
Nice, cool. Well, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please go and check out Adam's Red 5 reviews and his other channels. Obviously, I'm going to put all the links below. we really appreciate your time and watching this video. I just wanted to jump in with Adam as a fan, as somebody I interacted with on YouTube, also in my Facebook group, just like to chat, sit down and chat with a fan. Why reading Star Wars Legends books is still pretty cool, pretty awesome, and you have more opportunities than ever to do so. Today, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that bell button to subscribe to Star Wars Timeline. I will most likely have Adam back if he will have me, and we'll continue discussing Star Wars Legends books and so forth. And we'll see you guys later. Peace out.